this first issue of dealing with change happened to me about a year ago, February. Actually, it was on St. Valentine's Day, and because I am somewhat a master of timing, I'm not sure if Scott mentioned, I don't think he did, that I'm from Gainesville, Florida. This was in Duluth, Minnesota. February the 14th, Duluth, Minnesota. This is a really, really outstanding time to get an assignment to speak in Duluth, Minnesota. And I was speaking to the Minnesota-Dakota Hardware Dealers Association. Naturally, coming out of a broadcasting background, right to the Minnesota-Dakota Hardware Dealers Association. And it was St. Valentine's Day in Duluth, Minnesota. Now, where I live, we consider anything below 70 chilly. So in Duluth that day, it was something like no degrees. And I had bolted from the airline limo 82 Dodge van, and bolted into the Hilton Hotel. And after I checked in at the front desk, I said to the woman, "Excuse me, I'm speaking tomorrow at the Minnesota-Dakota Hardware Dealers Association, and I was wondering, somebody told me there's some kind of an event tonight, a cocktail party. Would it be here in the hotel?" He said, "Hopefully." She said, "No, actually, it'll be in the hardware store across the street." I said, "Really, a cocktail party in a hardware store?" Well, now that, on February the 14th, St. Valentine's Day, that's kind of neat. Now, let me ask you this. I'm really a very warm-blooded sort of person, and is there some way I can get over there? I know this sounds crazy, but is there some way I can get over there without actually going outside? She said, "Well, yes, there's an overstreet mall, one of these overstreet walkway things, that will actually go right from the second floor, I think it was the hotel, over to the hardware store building, and then you can stay in." I said, "Well, that's great. Now, where would that be? Where do you get on?" She said, "Oh, well, you don't need to worry about that. If you come down to the lobby at 6:15, the Dixieland Band will lead you over there." I said, could we go back and review this for a minute now? At 6:15, a Dixieland Band in Duluth, Minnesota will lead us to a cocktail party in a hardware store. I felt kind of sad that Seinfeld had gone off the air. This sounded like one of their scripts, you know. So at 6:15, I come down to the lobby, and here are these guys in their little straw hats and their little garters and things, and their little clarinets, and we're over at the hardware store now, and we're sipping cocktails in the hardware store. There was one other gentleman at the conference who was speaking who was not a hardware person, and I'd only met him very briefly, and I happened to see him walking around the hardware store like this. I came up behind him. I said, "Dave." He said, what are you doing?" He said, "I'm looking for one thing." I said, "Well, I'm available. I'll help you." "Dave, what would we be looking for?" He said, "I don't know." I said, "Dave, I'm going to have a little trouble here helping you. If I don't know, what do you mean?" He was a retailer in another field. He said, "Lou, anytime I go in any other store, I always look for one thing that I can adopt or adapt and use in my business that can change my business forever." I thought that sounded like a really neat idea. So I'm looking around for something that would change my business forever, and just then, this guy comes up to me and says, "Have you guys been in the basement?" Now remember, I'm from Florida, and I said, "Basement?" I remember basements, yes. "No, I haven't been down there." "What's down there?" They said, "That's where the contractors buy their stuff." I said, "Well, you definitely got to see that, you know." So we went down the stairs. Now, this is, because this is right in downtown Duluth, this was like it was like a mini Home Depot down in the basement, okay? So in other words, up on the top floor, they had the traditional hardware store thing where you had the little cardboard plasticky things with nail, you know, I'm pretty savvy about this stuff. Little cardboard plasticky things with nails in them, and little cardboard plasticky things with screws in them, and little hammers and little wrenches and little bug sprays and, you know, stuff like that. I should tell you, the level of my handiness is that my toolkit at home is a cardboard box with a hose and a hammer in it. So, basically, if you can't hit it or wet it, I'm pretty much at sea. So down in this basement, here's this giant bin of all this PVC pipe. And what does that stand for, PVC? Don't tell me. Anyhow, PVC pipe. And this big giant bin of like 8 billion nails, you know. And a big bin here of all these furnace fittings or something. And this big shelf with all this Danish on it. And then there's this... There's this shelf, and it has these little cardboard trays with like bear claws and crullers and stuff, and they're wrapped up, and they're got those labels on them, and they're just sitting in the middle of this. So I went up to the manager of the store. His name was Jim. I said, Jim, what are we doing with a bakery in the middle of the hardware store? He said, you know, Lou, Lou, that's L-O-U-L, Lou, you know, it's the funniest thing, Lou. Like 18 years I've run this hardware store. 18 years we've opened up here on the top floor like at 9 o'clock. But we had this contractor place downstairs like at 7 a.m. It's always open. And for like 17 of them, 18 years, these people, they'd come in and buy this stuff and they'd say, hey, where can a guy get breakfast around here? And for like 17 years we went, well, there's a Mickey D's down the street. There's a little cafe, you know, around the corner. Then when you get on the bypass, there's one of them cafes, you know. Denny's, I think it is. Grand Slam. Last summer, as a favor to one of my buddies, I hired his 17-year-old kid who was getting ready to go to the university to do some inventory for me. And on like the third day he's here, he said, you know, Jim, I'm thinking about these guys coming in here, and my dad's brother, he owns one of them wholesale bakeries, and I was just thinking, why don't we just like get some of them crullers, some of them bear claws, and why don't we like put them out here and sell them? Maybe call one of them wholesale joints, get some of that there coffee, have it for sale here. I bet you we could make some money. 17-year-old kid. He said, Lou, 2 things happened in 2 months. I bet you can tell me what they are. I said, well, did business pick up? He said, oh, yeah. 25% in 2 months because we got crullers. So these guys are out on a job. They're eating this good-looking hunk of confection. And somebody says to them, hey, where did you get that cruller? He says, oh, over to the Ace Hardware. That's where I got it. He says, second thing that happened, them suckers is now a profit center for the store. It just reminded me that if we look at change that goes on around us, if we really focus on change, it can make a big difference in our lives and allow that change to surprise us in steering us into another piece of business. Andy Grove, it's one of my favorite quotations from Andy Grove at Intel. He said there's at least one point in the history of any company when you have to change dramatically to rise to the next performance level. Miss that moment, and you start to decline.